welcome back. We've got new details this morning over the suspected killer of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. The alleged murderer still on the loose. Photos taken at an Upper West Side hostel where he stayed reveal his face. Look at these pictures where you can see his full face captured on camera, removing his mask to reportedly flirt with a hostel receptionist on the Upper West Side. Law enforcement say they believe he used a fake New Jersey ID to check in. Sources tell the New York Post the suspect arrived in New York City last month after taking a bus from Atlanta. Police also recovered the suspect's fingerprints and a burner cell phone near the scene of the crime, along with a water bottle that was purchased at a Starbucks shortly before the shooting. All of those items should have his fingerprints on them. The NYPD continues to look into the possible motive and the meaning behind what was left on the shell casings. And that was the words deny, depose, and defend. They were written on the shell casings left at the crime scene. Joining me now is former NYPD Lieutenant Darrin Porcher. Great to see you, Darrin. Thanks very much for being here. What's your sense on this case?
This is a troubling narrative, to say the least, but fortunate. The police have made tremendous inroads in taking this person into custody. Although he's not in custody now, they clearly know who the suspect is. As you mentioned earlier, they've established a fingerprint from several different sources, and in that same residence that he was staying in, the hostel, there were 2 additional residents that were staying in the same room. And it's impossible for you to enter and exit a room without leaving a trace of your DNA. So as a result, the NYPD's crime scene unit is going to work that room, and they're going to gather as much DNA as possible from that room. You're going to have things like skin fragments, hair follicles. This stuff is all going to manifest into the ID of who the suspect is. I believe they genuinely know who he is, but what's interesting about this is he was in New York 10 days before the UnitedHealthcare CEO was here in New York. Therefore, it clearly establishes that this was a premeditated attack.
So, I mean, we understand that the DOJ has been investigating people at the company for insider trading, Darrin. What does that tell you here? And also these words that were written on the casings, the shell casings of the bullets, deny, depose. What do you think that's about? Any thoughts on what could be behind this? You know, I was saying yesterday that could it have been that he was about to sing, about to talk about other people who were being probed for insider trading and potentially do a plea deal for himself? Is that why he was being targeted? What do you think?
Well, the first piece, in terms of the investigation by the Department of Justice, it's ironic that prior to this information becoming public to the shareholders, he and another counterpart sold millions of dollars in stock in the company. So that begs the question of the financial impropriety, and is there a possibility that he was looking to expose further information based on a consent with the DOJ and himself moving forward as it relates to prosecution? The second part, when we look at the writings in the shell casings, I mean, it's no surprise. We all have issues with healthcare companies because we've all been denied coverage at one point or another. So it begs the question as to, was this suspect a person that was denied coverage, or was there a loved one that was denied coverage? So these are all things that law enforcement is going to look through the lens of to determine exactly what the motive was as it relates to the death of the CEO.
Yeah, I mean, this could be broader, right? I mean, how big is this going to get? You know, what are investigators looking at specifically? You say that they could be looking for hair follicles. They could be looking at his fingerprints. I mean, what if he wasn't convicted of anything before? Would they have fingerprints? Are they going to be able to get a match for those fingerprints?
If he was not convicted in the past, it creates a more challenging narrative to find out who this person is. But I give you an example. Ancestry.com is something that we used, that's been used in the past to make an identification on a relative or a counterpart that has DNA in the system. And that's how the police would be able to leapfrog and find out who this person, who the identity of this suspect would be in this particular case.
Wow. And look at this video that we're showing. There was a person there, standing there, a witness there, as the shooter takes him down. And then that person, the woman on the right, she walks away. Do you believe all of those people were questioned about what they saw? Because you got a woman on the right, you got cars on the left, black cars. I guess drivers were in there.
Right. Well, I want to say the person that was in that vehicle to the left, they were actually questioned, and they were very forthright in what they saw. And I'm sure the person that's standing next to the door frame was questioned as well. But what's also important is the firearm that he's using is something that is referred to as a B&T 6 9mm. This is not a common firearm that's sold. So there's only a few retailers that actually sell this weapon. So you had investigators from the NYPD that have visited an assortment of different gun retailers to find out who possibly sold, who sold this weapon and who it was sold to. So that's a very significant piece in the equation in making the identification. But I genuinely believe that the NYPD has already identified who the shooter is, and it's just a matter of time before he's taken into custody.
So how is that timing in your view? So if they have identified a suspect, do you think we're going to know that today? How quickly will they turn that around to actually go in?
Well, it depends on how the NYPD feels as it relates to the location, a possible location of this individual, and would it possibly shake or deter him, because a lot of times these suspects believe that they're better and more intelligent than police departments, and they feel that they can still ride under the radar. And one thing that we have in the NYPD is the Crime Stoppers unit. And what they're going to do is they're going to circulate a series of posters to people throughout the city to show them who this individual is that they have in question. And the public is the greatest asset for taking these violent offenders into custody. And the NYPD is going to use that asset of the public to assist.
Darrin, does it seem to you that this is a professional or an amateur here? I mean, the fact that he had, a coffee cup, he threw away the Starbucks into the garbage, had a water bottle, threw that away, threw the phone, a burner phone, down the alley. Are these amateur mistakes on his part? But then again, when he's holding that gun, he's got a silencer. Initially, it looked like the gun got stuck, and he fixes it real quick, goes right in, shoots him again after shooting him first in the leg. Is this an amateur we're dealing with, or is this a professional?
All criminals make mistakes, whether it's an amateur or a professional, and we clearly see that he blinked as it relates to exposing his face or using a cup and discarding it. But just bear in mind, when we look at a lot of video, he is wearing gloves. So it seems as if he's trying to be as surreptitious as possible in covering his tracks, but it's just a matter of time. And so the amateur perspective, I don't think it really matters, because he's exposed enough to us as law enforcement to ensure that he's taken into custody.
All right, we're going to be focused on this, and we will wait to hear from the NYPD in terms of whether or not they are going in on that suspect they've identified. Darrin, thank you very much for your expertise on this. We so appreciate it. Darrin Porcher joining us
Thanks,
this
Maria.
morning. Thank you, sir.